It must be hard ringing the bells of doors that don't swing wide.
Okay, so we're starting our screen recording, and we're going to go to our friends at freestockcharts.com, which is probably the coolest charting site there is on the internet, until somebody builds one cooler. But no, really, it's a very good tool. It's available at freestockcharts.com. You do have to have a plugin available. I believe it's Silverlight from Microsoft. And I want to take a quick look at several things here. I want to start off by looking at UUP, which is PowerShares US Dollar Index Bullish Fund. And I want to look at exactly what is happening here, because as you can see, we had a high at 2560 back in June of 2010. We came to a low in mid-August of this year. A little bit of a retracement and a collapse of that retracement, falling below the support line that you can see right here. And now you see where the circle is, marks what I think is a fairly significant gap. See if I can drag it out of the way. Show you the gap. There's the gap. Let's get rid of the circle. Not so easy to do because I am a klutz, but there we go. Remove. Okay, so we've broken this trend line. Look at this gap right here. Well, what does this line mean? Where did it come from? Yeah, well, dropping back, say, a year, you can see that longer line goes back to this bottom here in December of 09. Let's go back to the 5-year time frame. That is actually established in 2008. I guess you could argue that's even a bottom on that time frame prior to 2008. But in 2008 we have here, we have an advance to its strongest point, decline, it finds support, it makes an advance again. One of our Fibonacci buddies needs to do an assessment of this retracement distance versus this retracement distance. I'd be curious to see if that's 2/3, but it looks like it might be something like that. Anyway, now we're having this decline. The question is, let's go back up to a shorter term. Let's go back to the 3-month. The question is, we've broken to the downside. Will we find support down here below 22.20, around $22 or so? That's very possible. We certainly don't see any signs of strength, or I don't see any signs of support before that. Okay, having said that, what does that mean to us? Well, what it means, for example, is that as the dollar declines in value, all kinds of political and international finance ramifications, but for those of us who are involved with precious metals, you can see that here's silver. This is, we'll come to the 3-month chart, make sure it's 3 months. A nice advance from about August 23rd, right there. Very steep, aggressive climb, leaving behind the triangle that it had been in. Let's come here. There's this topping around August 23rd in the dollar, corresponding to the bottom in the beginning of the trend in silver upward on the 23rd. And you can see that gold anticipated this move by starting somewhere around the 2nd in its advance. I think that's a relatively interesting phenomenon. Now, here's some of the real questions. Let's look at PowerShares QQQQ Trust stock market. August 23rd, a few days of indecision, but then it realizes the dollar is getting hammered, so if money comes to the stock market as a refuge from the dollar. My theory may not be true, but that's a PowerShares Trust. Okay, let's look at Something else. Let's grab come to a big stock here. Southern Company. Around the second, same time as gold, we see it, and it's rather flat but still advancing. Solid framework, very conservative stock. We'll come to our exchange traded funds. The euro going to a new short-term high in the face of dollar weakness, very likely. Vanguard's VT, Vanguard Total World Stock, starting around the 23rd, climbing to new high. You can see this is more or less of a rout for the dollar. Vanguard Emerging Markets, a little floundering, but on the right after the 23rd, we start our climb. And here we have the iShares Dow Jones US Basic Materials Fund. These are materials being tangible assets. Okay, so what I think we are seeing, if I can be so bold, is that as the dollar declines, all of the other assets that are the least bit decent are becoming a refuge for the money that's coming out of the dollar. Here we have the spider for the S&P 500 Trust. It's an ETF, SPY. And you can see that starting around the 23rd, it finished its regrouping, based itself, and started in advance. All of this, again, in contrast to the behavior of UUP, which is in a failing chart pattern. Now, very extreme down here on the stochastics and on the Williams, but I see no support. What I would like to think is that the stock market could get risky and that precious metals will stay strong and that the dollar will start to rebound as the election seems to come closer with some decent outcome for a more sane fiscal policy. However, I don't know. As you know, the Federal Reserve will stay in power no matter who gets elected, and they probably control more of this than anybody else. That's what I have for the moment. Thank you for paying attention.
It must be hard ringing the bells of doors that don't swing wide.